I remember my first trip to the sea, which was more than 55 years ago. As I recall, the family went to the Pacific Ocean when I was 5 or 6 years old. We had grandparents living in Vancouver, Washington, which was near the ocean, and still is. Somehow I knew the sea was comprised of salt water. My parents must have talked about it. Saltiness comes in a spectrum of varieties, of course, which I came to understand only with experience. I was running with my siblings in the sand near the ocean. A big wave brought a drop of the ocean to my lower lip. I instinctively licked it. Holy cow! Now that's salt water. I had no idea how salty it would be. What a weird and pleasant surprise. As it turns out, life is full of surprises for those paying attention. Enough about me. This episode of Means of Extinction describes 2 additional means by which humans could go extinct in the near term. I have already described 4 other routes in this space by which we are pursuing our own demise: conspicuous consumption, broiling Earth, loss of aerosol masking, and the implosion of nuclear facilities. The first of the 2 means of extinction I will describe today in this episode focuses on the sea and comes from a peer-reviewed paper in Nature, a renowned scientific journal. The paper was written by Christopher Trizos and 2 other scholars and published on April 8, 2020. The paper uses the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change's conservative representative concentration pathways to project the near-term disruption of ecological assemblages with a focus on the ocean. Quote, under a high-emission scenario, representative concentration pathway 8.5, such abrupt exposure events begin before 2030. End quote. Bear in mind that the representative concentration pathways ignore dozens of self-reinforcing feedback loops and also the aerosol masking effect. In fact, a peer-reviewed paper in the March 18, 2019 issue of the prestigious journal Bioscience, quote, found that the tone of the IPCC's probabilistic language is remarkably conservative, end quote. Yet this paper by Trizos and colleagues uses the representative concentration pathways to project the collapse of ecosystems beginning during the current decade. Captain Paul Watson, founder of Sea Shepherd, is credited with the saying, quote, if the oceans die, we die. We can't live on this planet with a dead ocean, end quote. Well, of course not. Life on Earth began in the ocean and spread to terrestrial habitats. Without the vibrant living ocean and all that comes with it, we will quickly go extinct. Yet the peer-reviewed literature projects the near-term demise of ecological assemblages within the ocean. And soon. This is not surprising. Again, quoting Captain Paul Watson, quote, if the oceans die, we die, end quote. The oceans are dying. So much for the sea. Next up, the potential for extinction from space, which is more surprising, at least to me, than extinction based on killing the ocean. A paper in the May 24, 2021 issue of phys.org is titled, Solar Storms Are Back, Threatening Life as We Know It on Earth. As indicated in the paper, quote, the geomagnetic waves unleashed by solar storms can cripple power grids, jam radio communications, bathe airline crews in dangerous levels of radiation, and knock critical satellites off kilter. The sun began a new 11-year cycle last year, and as it reaches its peak in 2025, the specter of power space weather creating havoc for humans grows, threatening chaos in a world that has become ever more reliant on technology since the last storms hit 17 years ago. End quote. Death by storms in space is not as crazy as it sounds. Quote, the most powerful geomagnetic storm ever recorded resulted in the 1859 Carrington event, when telegraph lines electrified, zapping operators and setting offices ablaze in North America and Europe. If a storm of that magnitude were to hit today, it would likely cut power to millions, if not billions, of people. End quote. We knew very little about the aerosol masking effect in 1859. Now we know, and what we know does not bode well for 1, this set of living arrangements, and 2, therefore, the continued persistence of our species as A, aerosol masking is reduced, and B, Nuclear facilities implode as their generators run out of fuel within a few days. The paper in phys.org is derived from an article in the May 20th, 2021 issue of the peer-reviewed journal Solar Physics. Written by Matthew Owens and 5 other scholars, the paper is titled Extreme Space Weather Events in the Solar Cycle. The abstract includes this information. Quote, space weather has long been known to approximately follow the solar cycle, with geomagnetic storms occurring more frequently at solar maximum than solar minimum. There is much debate, however, about whether the most hazardous events follow the same pattern. End quote. The peer-reviewed paper goes on to settle the debate, highlighting, quote, both the feasibility and importance of solar cycle prediction for planning and scheduling activities and systems that are affected by extreme space weather, end quote. In other words, space weather is real, and it has the potential to disrupt industrial civilization sufficiently to cause our near-term demise. Will it actually do so? Probably not, if only because it has so much competition from other phenomena. On the other hand, I've been surprised before. Anything can happen, and it usually does. Thanks for viewing this video. If you appreciated it, please subscribe to this channel. Additional perks are available to members of the Nature Bats Last YouTube channel, so consider joining.